My name is Father Tom Voorhees, and I am a priest for the Diocese of Lafayette. Almost 2,000 years ago, Jesus called the apostles to drop their nets and to follow him. Today, Jesus is still calling young men to the Catholic priesthood. If you are attracted to a life of service to God and neighbor, maybe God is calling you. If so, please contact your local Catholic priest in the Diocese of Lafayette.
Lord, make me a means of your peace.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for this edition of Catholics Today. I'm Blue Rothfuss, Director of Communications for the Diocese of Lafayette, and we're really glad that you stopped by to join us. It's a very exciting day for all of us in the Office of Communications, as well as the entire Diocese of Lafayette, as we welcome 4 of the 7 young men who will be ordained this Saturday as priests for the Diocese of Lafayette. Now, by the time you see this, all of these men will already be called Father, but today, since we're taping this before their ordinations, we will continue to refer to them as deacons. So let me introduce you right now to Deacon Brent Smith, Deacon Blake DuBrock, Deacon Andrew Schumacher, and Deacon Ben Pete. Thanks to all of you for joining us. We appreciate you being here.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start with you, Deacon Smith. Where did you grow up, and when did you first begin to discern a call to the priesthood?
Well, I grew up in St. Martinville, so grew up there, was a cradle Catholic, went to church all my life, had all the sacraments, parents raised us that way. I first heard the call to the priesthood about a year before I entered seminary, so I was 38 years old at the time. I was working as a nurse practitioner, specializing in cardiology, and a friend of mine invited me to a man-to-man conference that they have in Lafayette. So I went to that and just saw the powerful witness of men of faith all together. That sort of was a catalyst to draw me back into prayer, attending daily Mass, Eucharistic adoration, and through that really felt the call to the priesthood. So I met with a couple of priests who told me I'm probably being called to the seminary. And I was like, no way, that wasn't in my plans. So I remember I had scheduled an appointment with a third priest because I was convinced I'm going to find a priest who tells me something different, interprets this differently. But in adoration one day in the chapel, was just really praying about it and really just felt in my heart God clearly say that I was supposed to go to the seminary, you know. So at that time just felt a tremendous peace about that decision, and met with Father Kevin Bordelon, the vocations director, and eventually quit my job as a nurse practitioner, sold my house, and moved to Covington and started seminary there.
That's amazing. And Father Bordelon, in our previous interview, spoke about the gifts that all of you bring to the priesthood, and in particular, young men like yourself who have lived outside the religious life before entering it. So he was very complimentary of all of you, by the way. I promise. I promise. Deacon DuBrock, how about you? Where did you grow up, and when did you first hear the call?
So I'm from Marksville, Louisiana, a little farming community south of Alexandria. I felt called really at around the age of 15 at a Steubenville conference. I actively fought against that call for years, though. So kind of suppressing that, kind of staying away from the church in some facet because I knew that call would come back. Around the age of 24, 25, I kind of had an intellectual conversion or reversion back to the faith, coming back wholeheartedly doing ministry in some capacity with the youth. And then really at that point, the closer I got to the sacraments, the more fervent the call became. And so I entered seminary formation around the age of 27, about 12 years after I heard the call initially.
Deacon Schumacher, how about you?
From Crowley. I grew up at St. Michael's, altar server since I was very young, and just really good pastors from the time I was young all the way through. And so having that witness before me for so many years definitely had an effect on me, and never something I desired though. And so the same type of conference that Blake went to, I went to as well. Powerful experience in adoration one evening where I just kind of knew that eventually I'd have to say yes to that. I thought it was going to be sooner than later. Luckily, it was later, and I was able to go enjoy college for 4 years and graduate. Met Father Bryce Sibley, who really helped me discern, and we all went actually on a pilgrimage to Rome together, the three of us, and I got to know these guys. Blake had been in the seminary for a semester before, and he was able to answer some of those questions. And just to make me a little bit more comfortable, help me realize that God's calling all sorts of men, with all different types of backgrounds. And so with that example and everything else with good priests, I eventually was able to say yes. Yes, ma'am.
That's wonderful to hear. So interesting to hear all the different stories about how you came in. Deacon Ben, you have a very interesting story to tell as well. Let's begin with, where did you first grow up?
Yes, ma'am. I'm from Opelousas. I actually grew up in Prairie Roan, but I'm a lifetime parishioner of St. Landry Parish, and then I spent my whole life at Opelousas Catholic as well, so I graduated in '02. And I first heard the call when I was in the Navy. So I was a submarine officer for 5 years, and I was stationed in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and I was on the USS Olympia. And so 4 years in, I had to make a decision, would I re-up for a new contract, because you signed 5-year contracts. So I decided that the Navy was not for me, that at least at that moment I needed to get out. And so I was actually at my apartment one day after I kind of submitted all the paperwork and let the chain of command know, and I was like, well, God, what do you want me to do? And instantly the idea of the priesthood popped in my mind, and I said, no. Not doing that. So I just kind of
seeing a trend
put
here.
that aside. Yes, ma'am. Put that aside, and then from time to time, I thought of, I just kind of imagined meeting a girl one day, starting a family, buying a house, and all this good stuff. But every now and then, that same question would kind of come back. Okay, Lord, what do you want me to do? Priesthood. And I'm like, I don't like that, So then, I served my last year in the Navy, got out, moved back home, was looking for work in South Louisiana, some type of engineering job. And it's at that moment when I decided, okay, I do want to sort of kind of get back into my faith. I had a little rocky past, so started going back to daily mass, praying the rosary, and the big thing I did was reading the gospel. And when I was reading those gospels, it was just like Jesus was shouting at me, inner seminary, inner seminary. So fought it for a few months, but then eventually was like, okay, I at least owe it to talk to a priest. So I talked to my home pastor, Father Jim Brady, and the rest is history. So I entered that following fall, 2012. So.
And Father Brady is a good man. I'm not surprised that he
Yes, ma'am.
he
Yes,
helped
ma'am.
usher you into this wonderful journey. Deacon Blake, let's start with you on the next question. What role did your family play in your discernment process?
So my family's always been a solid foundation of faith, taking us to Mass on Sundays, especially my paternal grandparents. I remember them going to daily Mass, me going with them regularly, them ushering me to the altar to serve as an altar boy, even the extended family who have helped put on large conferences and things like that. So the Catholic identity has always been part of my family and something we were proud of. So when I told my family that I was discerning to enter into seminary formation, I was met with some shock, but with a lot of support. So that support has really sustained me throughout. I wouldn't know what it's like not to have their support, So it's just been overwhelmingly joyful for me to know that I'm doing something my family's proud of, that they've been praying for me throughout this process. So the sharing in this journey, they've been able to accompany with me, and I've seen their faith grow because of that. This small little yes has transformed a lot of my family members' faith and helped them grow in faith as well too. So it's been a reciprocal sharing and giving of ourselves of the faith, and then watching that grow. It's been a great journey. I'm so blessed to be part of such a faithful family that cares and has supported me so much.
It's wonderful to hear all of these stories of support. Deacon Andrew, how about you? What role did your family play in your discernment?
I'm one of 4 boys growing up, and so a lot of times with families like this, if the older brother does it, then the younger brothers are going to do it. And so because my older brother was altar server, I knew I was going to be altar server, and that support of just the brothers themselves played a big role. I remember telling my mom and my dad that eventually I was going to the seminary, and I think them, just like myself, was like, let Andrew go and do his thing. I'm sure he'll eventually come back and maybe get married. And that's what I was hoping. And but the thing was that we all together as a family began to come to understand the priesthood that much more, seminary that much more, discernment, and this vocation. So we all grew together, and eventually we all were excited about the possibility of the gift of me becoming a priest. And so very supportive, and it was just a tremendous blessing to have that. Yeah, absolutely.
I can imagine, most definitely. And Deacon, what about you? What role did your family play in your discernment?
Well, I would say kind of similar to Blake, just growing up, it was a very Catholic family. The sacraments were important. My dad, never would we miss a Sunday Mass, even going on vacation, things like that. So growing up with that, that made the faith important to me, and my parents and my family helped me to, when I was in high school, to sort of make the faith my own, to really choose it for myself. And so that, I would say, probably is the greatest gift, because it's stuck with me my whole life. They formed me at the beginning. And even since entering seminary, my parents have been very, very supportive, my whole family. I'm one of four as well, 2 older sisters and a younger brother. And we're practicing Catholics as a family. And so, but also they, no one has ever pushed me away. And my parents particularly have been very, very supportive, and just, making sure that, they always say, as long as you're happy, we're happy. And so that's a good attitude, and it's also good when that's what makes God happy too. When you're actually doing something that is good, and so.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Definitely. Deacon Andrew, let's start with you. Where did you attend seminary, and what have you enjoyed the most about your time of formation?
I entered at St. Ben's, St. Joseph Seminary College in St. Benedict, Louisiana, around Covington. We did 2 years of pre-theology over there, and then moved on to Notre Dame Seminary in New Orleans for graduate seminary. What I enjoyed most, the first thing that definitely comes to mind, is going 6-0 in the bonfire football game. Thanks to my boy Blake here. But the other thing definitely is you're entering a place where men are there together for one goal. Like the desire to become priests one day. Faith-seeking men desiring to just discern God's will in their life. And so we challenge one another, and we grow in holiness together. We're pushing each other, and we're at the same time, just like any team sport, any medical school where you're suffering together, you form this bond, and it's something that it's hard to explain from the outside, but from the inside, it's a special bond that we're pushing each other towards holiness, and that's our goal. Yeah.
It's wonderful to hear. Now, Deacon Ben, you've had a little bit of a different path than a lot of our other ordinands. Can you tell us a little bit about your seminary experience?
Yes, ma'am. So I actually entered seminary with these guys. We went to St. Ben's. I was with them for 2 years that we were all at St. Ben's. But I was assigned to go to Rome to study at the North American College for the last 4 years. So it's been hard being separated from these guys, because exactly what Andrew talked about. The best thing about seminary is the men that you're in seminary with. Again, just like you said, that one goal. Because while I was at St. Ben's, we had to give an end of the year presentation, and I mentioned this in the presentation that I've changed so much in just 2 short years, mainly because of being around guys like this who are forcing me to be a better man. So. But I would say one really special thing about being in Rome for me has been the ability to really experience the universal church. I love America, and I'm proud to be an American, but the rest of the world has a lot of different ways of looking at the world, and different cultures and philosophies and different ways of practicing their faith. And so that's just really educational. I mean, it helps you not only to appreciate where you come from, but to seek to make it even better. And I would say that's probably the biggest grace I've experienced from going to Rome.
That's wonderful to hear, definitely. Deacon, how about you? What was your seminary experience like, and where did you attend seminary?
Yeah, so like these guys, I started at St. Ben's in Covington. I went there for 2 years, and then Notre Dame Seminary in New Orleans for 4 years. So I remember when I was first thinking of entering the seminary, I'd never been to a seminary before. I really didn't have any idea. I thought, fun's over, buddy. You're going to have to give up everything. You'll never watch a movie again. Guys just walk around praying in straight lines, and you can't look up. Or I had no idea. So one day I just drove to Covington and said, I got to go check this place out. And I remember just driving in and seeing St. Ben's. It's just so peaceful, this little oasis. And it really just felt like home, So I was really comfortable with the decision to go there. And I echo what the other guys said. When you enter the priesthood, when you enter seminary formation, you're really entering into this fraternity and this brotherhood, and you grow with the guys as you go, and you always have that support. So I mean, we live with 140 guys at the seminary. You know, it's going to be weird to go in the parish and live by yourself or just live with one other priest. You've had these 140 guys who kind of think like you, are on fire for the faith like you, and it's really a blessing to go through seminary with all of them.
Sounds wonderful. And Deacon, what about you?
I think even with the fraternity, the formation there that we get, you know, we focus on four pillars: human formation, spiritual formation, intellectual, and pastoral. And the way those two seminaries, I know in our experience, have done that with the leadership at the seminaries has been fantastic. The church, the dioceses who send to these seminaries have provided formation by priests that are holy, that are virtuous, and men that we can look up to and aspire to be like. So it was just some of the most formative father figures I've had in my life, especially in the last 6 to 8 years, have become from those priests that are in seminary formation. So it's been fantastic to have men to look up to and to lead us to be holy priests of Jesus Christ.
And I'm sure that they will continue to be with you even after you become brother priests.
Right, they can't get rid of us now.
That's right. Our next question is something that all lay Catholics are always interested to hear, because there's always a tremendous personal connection, and that is, who is vesting you and why? Deacon Ben, can we start with you?
Yes, ma'am. Father Gary Scheck-Snyder is going to be vesting me. And so first off, when I was real little, I don't remember him, but at St. Landry, he was the pastor of St. Landry Parish. And so my parents, he was obviously beloved by my parents enough to where they invited him to our house a lot. And so I remember him from that, helping him out when he would come visit. He would say Mass in the house. And he's actually been with me my whole life. So whenever I graduated from LSU and was commissioned as an officer in the Navy, he came to Baton Rouge, and he was the chaplain for the commissioning ceremony. Then last year he came to the ordination in Rome for the diaconal ordination, and he was the chaplain for the pilgrimage group, and he's been a great family friend. He's been a fantastic role model for me, and I'm just honored that he's still here with us and still here with my family. And he married both my sisters, my older two sisters, so it just makes perfect sense that he would vest me.
It does make sense, and he's considered to be one of our miracles in the Diocese of Lafayette. We're all glad that he's still here on earth with us, most definitely. How about you, Deacon? Who's vesting you, and why did you choose that particular priest?
Father Bryce Sibley will be vesting me. He is pastor at Our Lady of Wisdom on UL campus. So he was the first priest that I went to when I started thinking about and discerning the seminary. So I had gone to UL, had my nursing degree from there, so I was going to Our Lady of Wisdom, and that was my parish. So he's kind of walked me through the beginning stages of thinking about seminary all the way through. He's been very supportive through these 6 years. So it was fitting that I would ask him to vest me on this day.
Most definitely. And Deacon, how about you?
Father Joseph Palermo, he was my spiritual director at Notre Dame Seminary. He's a priest of the Archdiocese of Notre Dame, and just forming a great relationship with him over the few years. And I just think of what the symbolism of the vesting is that we're putting on this cloak of Christ, this image in the vestments of who it is we want to model, this priesthood after. And Father Joe has been, to me, such a father figure, in Christ to me in so many ways, that I wanted him to be part of that vesting, to help me put on Christ in that particular way. So I'm just really grateful that he offered to do it. And after I asked him, he responded. And so it'd just be a great moment for us.
It's wonderful. I think we're all looking forward to meeting him, knowing the role that he played in your life.
Thank you.
Deacon Andrew, how about you?
Father Louis Richard, pastor of St. Mary Magdalene. He was a pastor of St. Michael's in Crowley growing up for a few years when I was there, and actually received my first Holy Communion from him. So there's this wonderful picture of the two of us during my first Holy Communion, where he had this wonderful mustache back then. I'm trying to convince him to grow it out, for Saturday, but I don't know. I also spent my internship with him for 4.5 months, my diaconate internship. And so he's just a wonderful pastor and a great father figure that I look up to, and it's just going to be an honor to have him do that.
I think that all four of you have made tremendous choices, most definitely. Deacon, let's go back to you. This is another thing that all of us are always interested to hear the story behind, because every story is different. It's even been referred to by one of your fellow ordinands in the previous interview that we did as sort of a Harry Potter process. You don't choose the wand chooses you. And so what I'm leading up to is tell us the story behind the chalice and the patent that you will be using today and for the rest of your life, basically.
Sure. So I got my chalice actually a year ago when one of my classmates was being ordained, and he needed to find one. His ordination was coming up. So we flew to New York, where there's a place up there that if you go and you choose something there, they reimburse you for your airfare. And you walk into this place, and it's like a museum that you get to just shop through. It's like a kid in a candy store to somebody who's getting ordained. And there's just hundreds of chalices, all different styles. And you just go through, they give you a pair of white gloves, and you just pick off things that you like, you put them on a table, and then you just kind of weed it down. So I remember I kind of weeded it down to 3 chalices that I was looking at, and finally chose the one that has a lot of images from Scripture all around it, so it could really mean a lot. Actually, you could like turn the chalice on different feasts and look at that particular image, and have that in your mind as you're going through the Eucharistic prayers and the prayers of the Mass. So my parents actually purchased the chalice for me. They call the chalice Henry because my mom said with the money that they used to buy that, she could have bought a sofa from, I think the company's called Henry something. So they asked me today, "Where's Henry?" I said, "He's in the car." "He's in the car? You better watch him." So they lovingly refer to him as Henry. So I'll cherish him for years.
I'm not going to be able to get that image out of my mind during your ordination. That's a wonderful story, Henry. Deacon, how about you? What's the story behind your chalice?
So Adrian Hammers is a really nice place. So the description of the event of us going there is the same. But for me, I decided early on that I wanted to have my mom come with me to help me make decisions and stuff like that. It'd be special for us, a time to bond, and just for her to feel, more of a participation in this journey with me. So as soon as I asked her to come, I got a call from my sister 2 days later, said, "Hey, I heard y'all going to New York, I'm coming too." And she was like, it's like saying yes to the dress, for a bride. She was like, "I'm not missing that." And then 2 days later, my brother called and said, "I'm coming too." So they all booked flights. We
That's
went
wonderful.
there in May. It was a great trip. But we also changed the theme, so it wasn't yes to the dress, it was yup to the cup. So we had hashtags throughout the whole trip.
That is
but it was special because we spent all weekend there. The first time we were there by ourselves, together, just my mom and 3 kids, and we went to see shows and things like that. But it was very powerful to go there to choose. Took 3 hours to choose a chalice that kind of fit me, and that I loved. And then when they engraved on the bottom, Father Blake Dubrock, ordained June 23rd, 2018, gifted by Mom, Dad, Lacey, and Tyler. It was just like a powerful moment. And so that will stay with me forever. The chalice is beautiful, and I love it. And there's a lot of great images on it that will deepen my prayer in the Mass. But that event and us coming together for that moment is irreplaceable to me. Yeah.
These stories are wonderful, definitely. Deacon Andrew, how about you? How did you come to have your chalice choose you?
When I entered seminary 6 years ago, my aunt, my mom's sister, knew that we had some relatives. Her husband's family had a couple priests in their family. He was my uncle's dad was one of 11 boys, and 2 of those were monsignors for the Archdiocese of New Orleans. And so when he passed away, he left this beautiful chalice to the Archdiocese and told them to hold it for a period of 20 years in case someone in the family would ever become a priest. And that time passed, but Archbishop Amen kept the chalice safe, and my aunt called, and they were able to save it for me throughout my years of seminary in case I would be ordained. And so on the bottom, it's engraved already from him in 1935. His brothers, from his brothers, they chose this chalice. Beautiful, and even the Vatican's jeweler, the seal is at the bottom. This is very ornate, and it hasn't been used in many, many years. And so that I get to bring this chalice back into use for the Diocese of Lafayette now is a tremendous joy and blessing, and it's a gorgeous chalice. So it's an honor.
That's wonderful. Wonderful to hear a family heirloom being brought back to life. Deacon Ben, how about you?
Well, I actually have two chalices.
Oh,
and
okay.
you're absolutely right. They both chose me. So today, for the bishop to bless, I have a chalice donated to me from the Knights of Columbus, the 4th degree that serves the St. Landry Parish area, and I think, well, somewhere else, but basically that area. So they gifted me a chalice, and so I'll have that for the bishop to bless. But for the ordination and then for my first Mass, so I'm going to be using not my personal chalice, and it's not been gifted to me, although Father Tom Voorhees, if he wants to, we can talk about that. So it was used, it was for a priest named Father Verbus Lafleur. So I think a lot of people know who he is.
Yes, very familiar with him.
And
Yeah.
so he's from St. Landry. He was actually born in Ville Platte, but was, when he became a priest back in World War II, he was a parishioner of St. Landry, so he celebrated his first Mass there. So I have his chalice. Well, Sacred Heart recently came across the chalice. It was in the private possession of a priest. I don't remember who, but he lives somewhere else in the state. So he, realizing kind of the significance of it, he gifted it to Sacred Heart in Ville Platte. So Father Tom Voorhees has graciously allowed me to use that both for the ordination and for my first Mass. And so it was kind of a, once I found out about the story in the chalice, it was kind of a no-brainer. It was, you know, I was in the Navy for 5 years. He was an Army chaplain.
But he still served on board.
He served in the military, and he
Right.
actually died at sea when he was a prisoner of war by the Japanese. And so they were transporting him and many other prisoners of war in an unmarked ship, and a U.S. submarine sunk that vessel. And so he died saving and pushing. He refused to go out first, so he died saving other men. So once I heard the story, it was absolutely, if I could use that, it's tremendous honor and to be able to use that chalice.
That chalice did choose you, Deacon
Definitely.
Bennett, most definitely. And there's a very strong push to put Father Verbus onto the path for canonization. So
Indeed,
that'll be very exciting. Hopefully that will happen within your lifetimes. That would be a wonderful thing. We're starting to run out of time, but very briefly, I'd like to ask each of you to tell me, about 20 seconds or less, if that's okay, what does this mean to you? What's in your heart as you take that final step toward becoming a priest?
Well, it's been a long process, 6 years of formation in school. But really what my prayers kind of focused on this week as we lead up to the ordination is for God to just really transform my heart into a heart of mercy, a heart of generosity, a heart of humility, mirroring Christ's own heart. So I pray for that in my priestly service after ordination in the parish. So.
That sounds great. Deacon?
I think this time is it's daunting, but it's exciting, all in the mix. I have all the feels, you know, everything that's been coming forward are true and good and beautiful, and I'm excited just to be ordained a priest of Jesus Christ, to pour my heart out to the people of God of this diocese. I just love this place, and I love the people, and I can't wait to give them Christ.
And Deacon?
Tremendous joy right now. It's humbling as well, just knowing that God chose me to do this, and somehow I was able to hear that and then say yes through tremendous support of so many people in this diocese. So it's just overwhelming joy at this moment.
Wonderful. And Deacon?
I wrote in the Acadiana Catholic magazine that I have this, my whole life always had this desire to be a father. And so I didn't expect this route for fatherhood, but it is real. And that's what makes me very happy right now, and that I am going to get to be a father in the church.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to all of you. Very much looking forward to seeing you become ordained on Saturday, and thanks for being with us today. That's it for Catholics Today. Thanks for joining us.